Hey everybody, it's Nick at Great Lakes Comic Con. I'm here with legendary comic book letterer Tom Orzechowski. You probably remember his name from lettering all those classic X-Men issues written by Chris Claremont and John Byrne and Dave Cockrum. Tom, tell us about the art of lettering. How do you get involved in that, and how did you end up in the comic book industry?
Well, when I was in high school, I took mechanical drawing, architectural drawing, so I was used to precise thinking in the first place. And working for tolerances, working for grid work, and I was part of a comics club when I was a kid, 15 years old, and everyone else could draw better than I could. So I figured, well, what don't they want to do? Because I want to be part of this gang anyway. So I took up the lettering, and I edited the scripts a bit. And when I was 19, I got a call from a friend of mine who became an editor at Marvel, who was about 20 or 21 years old at the time. And he said, if you can get here in a week, you can have a desk in the office. So, yeah, I was there in a week. And at that time, Stan Lee was still there every day running the place. Roy Thomas was the editor. John Romita was the art director. It was like all of my heroes from my younger days every day. It's just awesome. I mean, that's a true word for this instance. It was just incredible. Among people who were so gifted, who I grew up admiring. And I met Claremont at that same time in '73. And 2 years later, X-Men debuted in 75. And so they sent me the first issue just by accident, kind of. It was just the next job in the stack to be done. And I was in New York not long after and hooked up with Chris again. And they kind of finessed me out of the book full time by about issue 110, 112. And I stayed 18 years.
Okay, and I want to come back to the X-Men in a moment, but I wanted to ask you, I read that you were responsible for certain innovations and maybe different types of balloons for different types of characters. Is that true?
I did like to mess around, because if you're dealing with a flame being, I figured, well, let's have a little more of a scorching aspect to the balloons. And I played around. I wasn't the first one to do so. But X-Men was such a wild book, and Byrne was just on fire himself.
Yes. And
then Romita Jr. and Silvestri and Claremont. The energy pumped into that book was just staggering.
I always equated with John Byrne and Chris Claremont. When they were together, they were kind of like a Lennon-McCartney. They're great on their own, but together there was some magic going on. What do you think what did they have with each other that was so special?
I think they hated each other.
Like Lennon-McCartney, no?
Yeah, exactly so. And so that tension, Byrne wanted to do things one way, Chris had other things in mind. And so, as with Lee and Kirby, Jack would draw things from his point of view, and Stan would insert all sorts of additional stuff into the scripts. And likewise, Chris, who was not shy about doing scripting, heavy scripts, very heavy scripts, which I loved that book. I had a great time doing that book. And when Chris left Marvel to do other things, I went to him with him to Dark Horse for Aliens vs. Predator, went to him for DC for another series. And anytime, if he calls me tonight, I'll be working for him first thing tomorrow.
Tell us about how hand lettering evolved into digital lettering, and how did you adapt to that?
I've adapted pretty poorly. I'm competent, I'm adequate. They keep giving me work at DC these days. But it's a gig, you know. Meanwhile, I'm still working with all the recognizable characters. I'm doing Green Lantern. Lately, I've done Superman recently.
Tom, thanks so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.
Thanks, guys.